right, we're live. Hey, Tana, nice to have you on Coffee with Shanda.
Oh, thank you so much, Shanda. I'm so happy to be here.
I love it. So you guys, I have Tana Amen, her and her husband have a company that you may or may not have heard, the Amen Clinics. Where are the Amen Clinics, by the way? I know there's Newport.
Yeah, right now we've got 8. So they're around the country. We've got 3 in California just because California is so saturated. So we've got Orange County, Los Angeles County, and then San Francisco. And then we also have, dear Lord, we've got Georgia, Chicago, we have DC, and we are opening Dallas. And so we're just really busy. Did I miss one? I wondered if I missed one there. But
no, that's amazing.
Washington State. Yeah, Seattle.
Washington State. So let me share. So you guys, the reason why we have Tana on today is because, first of all, she is a woman of massive resilience. And I was sharing with her that I was talking to our team about just some of the things that you have accomplished, Tana. And I sit there as a driven woman going like, oh my gosh, like what you've been able to create and accomplish. Like you've got, I'm going to read this because you have so many. You have 10 books, a New York Times bestseller, Omni Diet. You are 3 times cancer survivor.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge. Like battling it once, but 3 times.
Yeah.
And to still have the resilience that you have, a lot of people would go into definitely just feeling like I need to really pull back. I want to dive into that because I want to understand your mindset behind some of this. VP over at Amen Clinics, which you just like rattled off so many of the different places that you guys have clinics, which I have personally gone to get my brain scanned at. And I'll share with you all why. You have raised millions of dollars for public TV. You're a martial arts enthusiast. I have been debating going and taking a martial arts class.
Please do. It's the best therapy you will ever experience.
Really?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay, so I've been really feeling a pull to that. And you're a nurse, which is incredible. And you have a new book coming out, Relentless Courage of a Scared Child. So I've got a lot of places I can start with you, but I'm just going to go woman to woman for a second. Just say, like, how? Like, how do you accomplish all of this? I mean, people wish that they could get 1 book out of them, not 10, right? Then there's like putting it all in to go for a New York Times bestseller. We're in the process of pitching a book in 3 weeks from now to the major publishing houses to go for a New York Times bestseller. It's like, and I'm 44. So I'm like, how did you create all of this? Talk to me.
No, that's good. You're still very young. So good for you. Yeah, it's interesting. So when I was young, I felt like I was way behind when I was young because first of all, I grew up in chaos, very poor, and then got cancer when I was 23. And I just felt like I was so far behind and went into a very deep depression and was looking at my life going, I'm just so far off track. I was looking at my friends who were graduating from college and I wasn't there. And I was frustrated by that. And at some point, I got my act together, felt this pressure, like I've got to get my act together. But I grew up with a mom who was, to say she's strong would be an understatement. Okay, she left home at 16, so she had a really tough life. And this, she's indomitable. And so I think seeing that as an example, my whole life, like no matter what, this woman would not take no for an answer. And she always told me, I have no choice. I have to start my own business. She was a woman during a time when women couldn't get paid decently at all and couldn't work overtime. She's like, I have no choice. If I'm ever going to pull us out of poverty, because I grew up pretty poor, she's like, I have to work for myself. She drove big rigs. This woman did everything to survive and then finally started her own company and retired very wealthy.
Wow.
So I saw this it's not easy to have a parent when you see this, when you have a parent that's that strong, it's not an easy thing always, but eventually her grit became my grit. And
I wonder if that takes out intimacy in someone's life being that strong. Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes I wonder if you can let the wall down to let people in when you're that strong. The reason why I bring that up is because I know that there's a lot of really strong women who watch us, right? If you're a strong woman right now, or if you're a man and you know a strong woman right now, say I do in the comments section, right? Like, it's like, how many of my strong people are out there right now that you feel like you've got to put the weight of the world is on your shoulders. And if it's going to get done, you got to get it done, which again leads me back to even the understanding of how you've been able to accomplish so much, because you need a team to accomplish things. Do you know what I'm saying? So intimacy. Right.
It's true. So I think that's true, but I don't know if it's as much because of although I will say that is true. There are some men that I felt were intimidated by that strength. And my mom, certainly that was true at times. I think the right man is not. My husband certainly is not. He is 100% my partner. And in fact, does the opposite, pushes me when I don't want to do something. He's there nudging me. He's nudging me to do things that are out of my comfort zone. So I think a strong man, a powerful man, is not intimidated by that. What affected intimacy more for me was being wounded. And that's something that I think is really important for people to heal, because that will destroy intimacy, no question. And so for years, that was just a big barrier. And again, my husband, I think partially because of his training, could see that and just wouldn't let that get in the way. And so he was able to see it and able to let me work through those things, and just wouldn't go away. So quite frankly, he just wouldn't go away. So it gave me that space.
That's powerful you say that, because when I was 37 and like almost forgot to have children. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I have no husband, you too, right? And so I was like, I have no husband, I want children. I didn't see my life later in life without grandkids and kids. Mm-hmm. And so I got really driven, and 90 days found my husband. And he would say to me when I would get upset or a trauma thing would pop up, he would look at me and he'd go, I'm not going anywhere. Like, I'm not going anywhere. Yeah. And the best relationship coaches in the world would say to me, Shanda, you're dating weak men. That's why they're not staying. Yeah. So when I hear you say that, I'm like, you know.
No, I tried to leave. I didn't try. I left him because he would ask me to marry him because he was too nice of a guy. And I'm like, the other shoe's going to fall. I know it is. I know from experience, he's too nice. This is too nice. Nobody's this nice. And I'm waiting for the other shoe to fall. And it just never fell. And it was super weird. And he wouldn't push, but he would never leave. And it was so different, So that's good. Space to heal.
That's so good. Okay. So I want to talk to you. I want to go into, I definitely want to go into some brain stuff, because you guys do a lot around brain work and brain health. And I went to your guys' clinic. But before I get into that, I'd love some more backstory. You have a new book coming out, Relentless Courage of a Scared Child. I'm curious about that. Is that you? You're the scared child?
Yeah. So it started with, the way that it started was I grew up in a lot of chaos and trauma and drama. And I think people who grow up in those scenarios don't even think of it that way after a while. You just think it's normal. And I'm thinking, well, it's just typical of garden variety dysfunctional, right? If there is such a thing, that's just what it was. And I always thought, well, other people have had it worse, which, by the way, is the sign of a resilient person. There are other people who have had it worse because you always minimize how bad it was. So I didn't know that, but I've been studying resilience. And so I was speaking. One of the things my husband wanted me to do with him was speak at the Salvation Army and help them reform their food. So when my New York Times bestseller, I was writing that book, and I had written that book to really heal myself. I'd done the work on that, done the research to heal myself, but it turned into this sort of organic process of becoming a business. And I was asked to help them reform the food at the Salvation Army, because when people don't eat right, they don't think right. And so I was like, oh, I'll absolutely help them do the menu. And then the director of that particular facility, which is their largest facility, 185 beds, said, no, I actually want you to come help the people. And I was like, no one asked me to help people. I'm willing to do the menu. And I realized at that moment, it was a trigger from my past. There's so much addiction. I watched my mother and grandmother fall to the floor screaming because my uncle was murdered in a heroin, a drug deal gone bad. And so one of my uncles was murdered because of my other uncle, who was an addict. And it was just crazy. And I've grown up with so much addiction in my family that I was extremely judgmental. I did not want to do this, but I ended up doing it out of duty and obligation. And as I'm getting on stage, I'm just angry. I'm judgmental, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm a praying person, and I'm like, why am I feeling so? I'm a nurse. I know that I am more sophisticated than this. And so I'm getting up on stage and I'm like, please, I can't help these people if I can't cross this bridge. But what am I going to teach people about gluten and insulin resistance when they're jonesing for a pipe and a needle? Like, I can't get this through my head. And as I'm saying this prayer, all of a sudden it hits me. And I have this epiphany that we were all in the same place at one time. I looked out there and I'm like, all I saw was scared kids. I saw scared children like I was at one time. And all of a sudden I was able to cross that bridge. And I realized they're judging me as much as I'm judging them. But at one time we all started in the same place. I don't know why one of them turned right and I turned left. I don't know. But the bottom line is, if I can get back to that same place when we were all kids, maybe that's one less scared children in the world tomorrow.
It actually could bring me to tears. Like, I could feel tears in my eyes with that, because it's so deep for people to kind of, that's a place that we can all meet in that is unified.
Yeah. Even when I think of what's going on right now, I really try to stay politically neutral because I'm a nurse and I've taken care in the same day, taken care of, a gang member who was shot by a cop, and a cop shot the same gang member. I mean, it's pretty crazy when you walk on a unit and you see cops and gang families there together, right? So I have to stay neutral, because as a healer, you don't get to choose. You made a vow to take care of people, and they all bleed the same, they all cry the same, they all grieve the same. Their families feel pain the same. And so, but when I, again, go back to that place of, we're all scared children at one time, and we still have that within us.
I'm surprised that with all of that in your history and your background, you're able to accomplish what you've been able to accomplish.
So the subtitle of my book is How Persistence, Grit, and Faith Created a Reluctant Healer. So yeah, I honestly, again, it's the grit. I think my mother's grit definitely became my grit at some point. I think part of it is genetic and part of it is your model, the modeling you grow up with, but also I can't underestimate faith. I just did a whole show on faith because I don't know how people live without it. Honestly, I did. I tried and I wanted to die. So when I had no faith in my life, I prayed for a truck to hit me every day. The depression was so bad, I wanted to rip my skin off. And so there was nothing going to pull me out of the hole I was in. And that's how I know. Okay. So let me take that moment to even, okay. So I remember Dr. Amen, your husband, saying to us at Genius Network, because I met him at Genius Network, and I saw him do a presentation on brains, and I saw football players. Like, my child will never be introduced to football. Like, just no way. There's no way my child. People will be like, I can't believe you wouldn't let them in football. I'm like, no way. Like, I don't even. I mean, you love them and you love their brain. Yeah, you don't even want them anywhere near that when you actually understand what really happens to people's brains. So I saw the rehabilitation, and I also saw how damaging. And I remember him saying something like the brain going dark and black in different areas and holes. And I remember him saying something, and you probably know this better than I do because I was so shocked. It was actually around murders, like people who murder. When you screen their brains. Can you pick that up for me for a second to share? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, so we've studied, we did a study on 90 murderers. And so we've actually seen a number of murderers. And there's two different types that we've seen. There are some where their brains the emotional centers are lit up, but most of them have cold brains. The emotional centers in their brain are cold. So they don't feel empathy the same way other people do. They don't feel that emotion the way other people do. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the connection is to faith there. My thought is it probably isn't much. The activity is dropped significantly. Yeah. What the whole talking about is a lack of blood flow. So when I say cold, I mean it's a lack of blood flow to parts of the brain that make you feel certain things. I also remember him sharing somebody in your family. A nephew or a niece that he was sharing was showing drawing pictures that were not happy pictures. That is my husband's passion story. So he gets, because he got criticized a lot. When you're pioneering anything, you're on the bleeding edge, not the cutting edge. Because when you're introducing something and basically saying, we've been doing it wrong, that's not going to be very helpful, right? To people who want to think they're doing it wrong. But what got him over his fear of being criticized, in pioneering this technology for psychiatry, is his nephew, who's now my nephew through marriage, was 9 years old, and we got a call from his mother saying that he's sad, he never smiles, he's just angry all the time. He attacked a little girl on the baseball field for no reason. And when she went in his room, she found 2 pictures, one of him shooting other children and one of him hanging from a tree. Ugh. This is a 9-year-old. That's not a normal thing for a 9-year-old, right? So he wanted to scan him. And when he scanned him, he found this big, what you would call a hole. What it is a lack of blood flow in the left temporal lobe, like that area that should be the left temporal lobe. It was like missing. And so he sent him to a neurosurgeon. Basically what they found was they did another scan and they found a cyst. And so no one would drain it because they're like, oh, he's not symptomatic. And my husband's like, he wants to shoot other children and you're telling me he's not symptomatic? So we finally found a neurosurgeon who was like, yeah, he's definitely symptomatic. They drained it. His behavior went back to normal. I just saw him. They're pregnant. He's married. He has a house. He's having a baby. His life is normal now. But when we think of how many people we could save from that pain, if we would just look, I'm so passionate about what we do.
Yeah. So I want to go into a little bit of this because I went to get my brain scanned with you guys, right? Because, I thought I was having a foggy brain, and I was like, I'm forgetting where things are. And I'm just like, I didn't know if it was normal or if it was, I'm getting older, or if it was things I did in my 20s, like were recreational, not good for me. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I went in and I did the scan, which by the way, was actually so awesome. Like the experience was so awesome. And so I went and got a scan and then did the test the next day. And then my brain came out good. And I actually felt disappointed because I'm an entrepreneur. And I thought, for sure I have ADD because every entrepreneur has ADD. And it was like, no, your brain is perfect. And I was like, oh, but there was a piece that when I go to sleep, like a part of my brain opens up, lights up a little bit more.
That's your emotional center. So that if it's affecting your sleep, that might be why you're feeling a little foggy. So you could have a pretty brain and other things might be affecting you. Like for me, I have high thyroid because of the cancer that I had that kept coming back. My quote unquote chemo is high dose thyroid, and that affects sleep. So that can make me feel foggy the next day, even though my brain might be fine. But over time, if you're not sleeping, that might affect your brain, right?
Right.
So there are lots of things that can affect your brain. Hormones. Emotional, like stress is one of the biggest things. So anxiety right now with everything going on is affecting a lot of people.
That scares me. Stress scares me because I know Chalene Johnson got her brain scanned with you guys too, and she freaked out when she saw her result.
But now her brain is so much better.
Yeah. What are some of the things that she would have been told to do to get her brain on track?
So we know not everyone's coming to see us. And so that's why my husband writes all his books. And one of the ones that I helped him write specifically for this reason was The Brain Warrior's Way. So I do the lifestyle and nutrition part of what we do at the clinics. So The Brain Warrior's Way was actually, if you came to us and if we weren't going to give you medicine, this is really what we would tell our patients to do, right? And we actually break it down by brain types. So with Shailene, we do so much based on lifestyle. So much of what we tell our patients to do is nutrition and lifestyle and exercise and sleep and getting all of those things right and cutting back on alcohol, which by the way, a lot of people are not going to be happy to hear this, especially during a time when we're supposed to be staying at home, and isolating. The American Cancer Society just came out yesterday with a notice saying that any amount of alcohol increases your risk for cancer. And so say if you're just having one drink a day, you're okay. They rescinded that. All alcohol. Now I don't drink much, but I would have 1 or 2 drinks a week, or, sometimes I would be 1 or 2 a month. I'd have a glass of wine socially. And now I'm like, oh, I have a history of cancer. So for me, that means something. So yeah, I'm going to find a different way to, socialize or de-stress or whatever. My lavender tea is now going to be my new thing. But my husband doesn't drink alcohol. Yeah, exactly. Green drinks, that's exactly. So Shailene, it's just the same prescription that we would tell everybody, except that the nutrition part of it would be based on sort of your brain type.
Okay. What are the different brain types?
So you could have, well, there's 16 of them. So we would actually recommend that you go to our brain type assessment. So you can go to www.brainhealthassessment.com. And yeah, you can actually get your specific brain type. And there's a lot of recommendations in there. And also Brain Warriors Way, we would specifically go through with you what to do. A lot of the nutrition, the baseline is very similar for everybody. You got to cut out the sugar, right? And then we would actually have you for for a couple months, we want people to cut out gluten, dairy, soy, those things, the things that are the biggest culprits, and then add them in back slowly, one at a time, to see which ones are actually affecting you the most. The ones we know affect people the most are gluten and oftentimes dairy, right? Those are the big ones that affect most people. We just see people get radically better. We don't see anybody get worse by taking those out, but we see them get radically better. There are a few people who, a small percentage of people who doesn't really seem to matter. Most people it matters. Because why? Because if it affects your gut, it's affecting your brain. We know what affects your gut. Gluten affects everybody's gut, not some people's gut. And so that's why cutting gluten, everyone's like, well, I'm not allergic to gluten. It doesn't matter. It affects your gut. And if it affects your gut, it affects your mood. It affects your memory. It affects how you feel throughout the day, the decisions that you make if your gut's not right. So that's why it's such a big deal. And exercise, because all of those things are going to affect your sleep. They're going to affect the stress that you feel, the decisions you make, the mood that you experience day to day.
I worry about stress.
Yeah.
I worry about stress because I handle pressure really well. Mm-hmm. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that my body's not under stress.
And handling pressure, soldiers handle pressure, but they're under fire, right? So being able to handle it acutely is important. It's normal. It's normal for us to have a stress response. If you ran into a war zone, you need that stress response. If you ran around a corner and you saw a white tiger or any tiger, you should have a stress response. It's designed to get you out of that situation quickly. The problem comes in when there's always a tiger in your house and you don't know where it's at and you can't get away from it.
But how did you create all these results in your life and be able to manage your stress?
So for me, prayer and meditation, critical.
Sorry,
prayer, meditation, exercise, critical. I mean, for me, I'm not one of those people who can do one thing. It's like, oh, I'm going to focus on diet, or I'm going to focus on prayer. I'm just not one of those people. I'm an all or nothing, jump the canyon kind of person. And I've discovered I need all of those things. So I spend time doing all of those things. And when I don't, I feel out of balance. We treat people at our clinics based on 4 circles: biological, psychological, social, and spiritual. My husband and I both went to Christian colleges. And so we got a different perspective on our training. I went to a Christian nursing school. He went to a Christian medical school. And they teach you things a little bit differently. It's not just biological. It's not just biological and psychological. It's actually biological, psychological, social, and spiritual. All of those areas of your life. And when we say spiritual, we don't just mean our belief system. Because believe me, I worked at a medical center that treated people from all over the world. We get it. We're not just pushing our belief system. But when people who are purposeful, who have that have some sense of spirituality in their life, are not only healthier, they live 11 years longer. Okay, so the biology would be your brain. Did you have a brain injury? It's your hormones. Did you have cancer? Did you go through chemo? It's everything. It's what you eat. It's all of that stuff. That's your biology. How is food affecting your life? The psychology is your thoughts. It's your thoughts lie to you. They lie a lot, but are you believing them? And what are you filling your mind with? If you're turning television on today, you're probably terrified every single day, right?
I don't do that.
Understand what's happening in the world. And if you're passionate about something, be involved. But it's also really important to be involved in a positive way, a way that's not going to ruin your life. So that's the psychology. And being able to manage your thoughts, talk back to them, know when they're lying to you, and have a method for controlling them. But then there's the social circle. The social circle is who you hang out with. Who you hang out with matters because people are contagious. So if you are an alcoholic trying to be sober and you go hang out in a bar, good luck with that. So that's just an example, right? If you're a sex addict and you are, you're hanging out with people who don't have the value system of you trying to eradicate that in your life, and you want to have a happy marriage, good luck with that. You need to be hanging out with people who support you in achieving the type of life that you want to have. And then there's the spiritual circle. Why does it matter? Why does it matter? Why is the world a better place because you breathe? Why is the planet going to be better because you're here? And that's what we try to teach our kids. Instead of always being in the problem, be in the solution. When my daughter comes to me and says, it's not fair, she flipped when she was put on quarantine. She had just gotten her driver's license, just got her first job 1 week before. And then it all shut down. And she's like, she's such a good kid. She's a 4.1, you know, she's just a good kid. She's never been put on restriction in her life. She's like, and now I'm being put on restriction for something I didn't do. And she couldn't understand it. And I'm like, I love you, honey, but you know what I'm going to say. She's like, I know. Life is not fair. It's a place with bad food and farm animals. And I'm like, that's what it is. What are you doing to make it better? It's not about being fair. It's not fair that babies die. It's not fair that, you know, there's injustice in the world. But what are we going to do to make it better? You've got to take responsibility. Responsibility is the ability to respond.
It's powerful. That's so powerful. We actually we have a 5-year-old. We actually took him off. He's allowed to watch all of his choice movies on Friday and Saturday, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday, he can only watch Christian-based cartoons on a site called PureFlix. And we noticed in one day, we noticed he's a spirited child and he's like karate kicking you and, you know, all that. And we're like, this just doesn't work. Right. And we noticed in one day, his little anger outbursts almost go down to nothing. Within 4 or 5 days, it was like he was starting to say, Mom, I love you. Can I help you with something? Do you need something, Mom? Like, we were on a run this morning. He picked me flowers. And it's not like this sweet little thing that your kid does every now and then. My kid's doing it multiple times a day now, asking, being thoughtful and powerful and part of the family and not like this spoiled little brat.
How old?
5.
Yeah, so this is such a critical time in his brain development for teaching him, filling his mind. What you fill his mind with is going to help shape him. And it's just so important, and we don't think about those things. Yeah, well,
the fact that he just learns, like yesterday he said after a movie, he said, Dad, I have to tell you something. And he said, what's that? He said, I learned patience. I learned how to be calm off the movie I just watched. And we were like, then he watched PJ Masks, and all of a sudden he's like, or even The Lion King, he's singing that Scar, and he's attracted to like all the bad parts. And I'm like, because it's so glamorized. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's so crazy who we spend time with and what we spend time consuming, how that changes our thoughts. And we know this, but I don't know if we give it enough credit.
Oh, you know, as adults. It's so true, Shanda. It's so true. So I can't turn the news on. I'm just one of those people who's highly triggered. And so for 2 days, I haven't watched the news. I did a live chat the other day. I was just so upset. And I don't normally get upset and emotional like that, especially with my community, but I was kind of getting bullied on social media for not taking a political stance. So I don't turn the news on, and I try not to read those messages. I have my assistant go on and take them off because it's so painful and it's so triggering. And so I've been so clear. These last 2 days I've been praying and meditating. And then my husband came, we were having coffee, and he doesn't affect him the same. So in all fairness, it just doesn't affect him the same. And he started mentioning something about the news, and bam, I was just right back there. I was just right back to just being angry. And I'm like, it's just that fast. And if it's to us, imagining what it's doing to a developing brain.
Yeah. No, totally. Okay. So I want to bring this home here. So, when you're looking at steps that we can take to improve our brain on a regular basis, I know sleep, I heard you. Yes. I know like what your environment, your thoughts, your biology, water. How important is water?
Critical. So we actually scanned one of the most famous health coaches who wrote a book that sold 5 million copies. You probably do. He changed the way we exercise, basically. And he's not really, I think I'm allowed to talk about it, but I'm just out of respect, I'm not going to say it. Anyways, he came to us and his scan was terrible. And we're like, he wrote, these books on nutrition, and we're like, well, what's going on? My husband was like, what's happening here? And so he's like, are you doing cocaine? Like, what's going on? That's how bad the scan was. He's like, no, I promise, I've never done drugs. Like, I don't know. So after the question, my husband will question him and figure out what's going on in his life. The reason he was in town was to do a photo shoot. And what do you think fitness models do when they do photo shoots?
Oh, they shred out.
With Lasix and dehydrated for 2 days. So he dehydrated. He was eating chicken and broccoli and dehydrating for 2 days. And so that's what they do. They intentionally, in order to shred, right? And so he's like, okay, do me a favor, go hydrate like crazy, and then we'll rescan you. Brain was like, beautiful.
How dangerous is that?
Oh, it's
on
really
a regular basis.
Let me tell you two studies. They did a study on pilots. So of all the people you don't want dehydrated, let me tell you, it's pilots. Because they did a study on pilots, and pilots who were only 2% dehydrated, 2% dehydrated, lower than normal, that dramatically affected their cognitive reasoning and their ability to spatially function. Yes. So that's one. The other one is they did it on fitness people who are not bodybuilders, but I don't know if it was CrossFitters, but a group of people who work out all the time.
Yeah.
In the gym. And what they discovered was when they were hydrated, they were 19% stronger lifting weights. When they were dehydrated, they were 19% weaker. You are weaker and you don't think straight when you were dehydrated.
I'm more concerned about what that would do in the long run if you kept a lifestyle up like that.
It ages your brain.
Well, so
drinking alcohol dehydrates your brain. So if you drink too much and you're not hydrating, it ages your brain. I mean, alcohol ages your brain anyways, but it's also dehydrating you.
So is that like Alzheimer's and that type of stuff coming from that type of stuff? Like Alzheimer's or dementia?
Anything you do. So we have a model called Bright Minds, and Bright Minds is a mnemonic. It's basically, those are all there are 11 risk factors. And one of them is the nutrition. It's the nutrition. So the N in Bright Minds is nutrition. It's what you're eating and how you are basically, and nutrition also includes water. You've got to be hydrating your brain. So one of the fastest way to improve, I often post that hydrating is one of the fastest ways for you to wake your brain up.
Versus coffee.
Yeah, because coffee will quickly wake your brain up, but then it's going to actually make you sleepy later because it decreases blood flow to the brain. And so here's how you know. We often tell people, like, if you've got bronchitis or you've got some sort of problem going on in your bronchial and your lungs, coffee is helpful because it actually vasoconstricts. So you can breathe better. Well, if it's vasoconstricting, what do you think it's doing to your brain? It's vasoconstricting the blood vessels, right? So long term, like 1 cup a day, 1 normal size cup is not going to really do it. But if you're having too much of it, what happens is, you feel really awake and then you feel really tired because that vasoconstriction is decreasing blood flow.
How early can we scan our kids at the Amen Clinic? And I asked this because my son fell off a couch at one point and almost went out, but didn't. And I always wonder if he's 5, how early he can go in and scan.
So we don't just automatically scan kids. Okay. So it really depends on the kid. It depends on behavior. It depends on what's happening with that kid. Really young kids would need to be sedated. And it's one of the reasons we only do it based on behavior, right? Are they symptomatic? Is it really necessary? So we have lots of ways we treat people, but we also do something called QEEG. So for kids that can't be scanned or aren't ready to be scanned, or we don't want to sedate, we will do something called a QEEG until they're older and we can scan them. But if they are truly symptomatic, if you're having serious issues with your kid, then yes, we can talk about it. It's not the only thing we do or the first thing we do for little kids.
Okay, so serious issues are like massive amounts of anger or drawing.
Massive amounts of anger. If it is greatly affecting their life, your life, their school, cognitive impairment, that kind of thing. Yeah.
What about ADD, things like that?
So we're going to dig into a whole thing here. And I don't want to presume to be taking the medical position here. I'm a nurse, not a doctor. So let me be very clear about that. anything I say is a very generalized statement. It's not based on your child, and it's not a medical statement. And I want to be very clear about that. Okay.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, there's a lot of things. Like I said, we're going to take that 4-circle approach, because we're also going to, we don't just automatically medicate a child, because we want to also do everything we can to change their lifestyle. We're in a society where it's become so easy for parents, and we understand parents have it difficult right now, especially being at home with their kids all day. We thought they had it difficult when they had to go to work all day, right? Now it's way more difficult because they're working from home and they've got kids at home doing school. So they're quickly giving kids stuff to placate them. Television is one. We just talked about that. You see what that happens to the behavior of your child watching television. But it's not just that. It's snacks. It's sugar. It's red dye. It's all of these things. So cleaning up their nutrition, making sure they are getting proper exercise, moving their bodies, filling their minds with the right things, teaching them how to control their thoughts. All of those things are so important, because what we see is that the symptoms of ADD go down dramatically. In fact, there were 2 studies done in Holland, 2 major studies, and they found that 70% of ADD symptoms went down in the kids that they did the study with. And this was just nutrition. Just nutrition, by eliminating sugar, red dye, gluten, and dairy. I think that was it. And by just those 4 things, they eliminated them, and 70% of symptoms. And it was done twice, 2 different studies. So it's really critical that we do that before we just start throwing a bunch of medications at kids.
I just heard a study yesterday that when children breathe through their mouth at nighttime, if they teach them how to close their mouth, they put their teeth together and close their mouth and have them breathe through their nose, that it changes their brain function of ADD, and the ADD starts to go away, which is fascinating. Yeah. And if you can keep them breathing out of their nose, that it goes, it's fascinating. I was like, wow, this so much stuff we don't know, and how quickly when we go to a doctor, and you guys are, well, your husband's a doctor, right? That you're given the medication to put them on.
Well, and so I could get into that too. But one of the things I do is, because I was in a bad car accident when I was younger, and I didn't know it affected my brain. And so now looking at my scan, I realized, oh, oops. And so now I'm doing hyperbaric oxygen because it affected the frontal lobes. So I'm doing hyperbaric oxygen to stimulate blood flow to that area. So
we did that with our son, because he's got a bit of a speech thing, and it's pretty much cleared now. So we went 40 times, but you got to have some cash to go into hyperbaric oxygen chamber.
Yeah, it is. It's a little pricey.
Yeah. Okay. One last question. So if someone goes and gets their brain scanned, and you guys have tons of clinics, amenclinics.com, and by the way, it's not even that expensive, you guys. It's not expensive at all to go get your brain scanned. So I recommend everybody does it. But once you do that, how often should you go back?
It depends. So we don't necessarily say that you must come back and get scanned. It's not like a thing where you come back yearly. It's not like that. So it really depends. We have a lot of executive types. They're super competitive, or entrepreneurs. They're super competitive, right? They want to see the improvement, and that's okay. We don't want you doing it overdoing it, because it is a nuclear scan. So it's about the same amount of radiation as flying from California to New York. Yeah. It's about the same amount of radiation as getting a CT scan. So it's not an excessive amount of radiation, but we don't want you doing a ton of them. But people who want to see the improvement, or if you've got a reason. So if you are symptomatic, then that's a reason to do it. Just like if you broke your arm, but then let's say 2 years from now, you were in another accident, you would go get a CT scan. You would not get a scan, right? You would do that. Broken arm is not the right example, but my point is you would go get a scan because you would want to see what's happening, because you're symptomatic. So that's the reason. But we do have some entrepreneurs who are like, nope, I want to see the improvement because I've been doing everything I need to do. And that's fine.
I just want to make sure I don't end up with dementia or Alzheimer's at some point. And I know that Shalene was showing her scan saying that she was heading in that direction, and she was a health chick and is a health chick, right? So I think like that part, like knowing that you can do things to prevent that, when your brain's showing signs, is really powerful to me.
Well, and there are so many things people do that they don't know are harming their brain, and just learning, just getting the information. Sometimes it's a matter of literally nutrition. It's like, and I don't mean just nutrition, like it's like their vitamin D is low, or it's like simple stuff where they need to take fish oil. Sometimes it's just, you need to get the nutrients up in your body. You need to, improve that part of your life.
Well, and unfortunately, the advice out there is so random, depending on who you go to, that this is why I think your network is your net worth. And when you have friends and we're connected, it's like you can call each other, and, successful people, powerful people hang out in the same circles. Yeah. And then there's other circles of people who you don't know are vetted, if they're vetted or not. Somebody asked, is there an area that you can go in Canada to go get a scan?
Oh dear. We actually, it's near Vancouver. There's one group that my husband holds a training for doctors, and he's like trying to get more people on board. There is a hospital somewhere near Vancouver, and I'd have to get the name of it. Maybe I'll pass that on to you, but I know there's a group near Vancouver that does it. Yeah.
Awesome. So if I don't think we can get your new book coming out yet. When does it come out?
January 5th.
Oh,
so we're trying to skip all the election stuff.
So there's still a little bit of time. Well, here's the deal. Yeah. We will promote your book and send your book out to our list in our community when it comes out. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you or know more?
So either Instagram, I'm always on my pages, Instagram, Facebook, also TanaAmen.com.
Awesome. Yeah.
Our podcast. That's where my husband and I are like frequently.
Yeah. What is the podcast? What is the
Brain
podcast?
Warriors Way. It's Brain Warriors Way podcast.
Brain Warriors Way podcast. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Tana. You are amazing. We went a little longer than we normally do, but you are so much love and knowledge in you. We really appreciate having you.
Oh, it was a blast. Thank you so much, Shanda.
Bye, everybody.